Good evening. It's good to get to see all of you through this fashion, though I don't actually get to see you, but to see you through this way of a fireside chat. Just a little bit of something tonight as I get ready to send out bulletins and things. I am sitting out in the back again. We've been working in the gardens, which is always a novel experience. Becky has a green thumb. Mine kind of kills everything, but we're trying to figure out how to get some things planted and stuff and move dirt and all those kind of things. And I was thinking as I was looking at my hands, I wondered about God's hands, what they look like. And because as I sat and looked at my hands, even after scrubbing them, they've still got dirt under the fingernails. It would take me a little while to work them over to get ready to have communion tomorrow if we were serving that. But to make sure they're clean, to get them like they need to be. And there's kind of like stains on my hand now from working the dirt today and yesterday. It's just makes you wonder, what do God's hands look like? Because He works with dirt. Years ago, I in Nebraska, right before I left, I went unfortunately to a funeral of a young man who was about 21 years old, and he was one of my confirmation students, and he was killed in a terrible truck accident that just left him and his family, him dead and his family mourning. And this was literally right before I moved to Illinois. But I went to the funeral and sat at the back, and I knew a pastor there. It was the second pastor since I had been at that congregation. But I was talking to her, and she made a comment, and she thought about this young man. She said, "Yeah, when I first met him, because this young guy was a farmer through and through. All he wanted to do was be a farmer. Matter of fact, he had just, apparently I heard the stories that he had just bought a tractor for himself. He'd saved up his money trucking. And he was doing things so he could start buying some farm equipment because he couldn't look forward enough to being able to work the land." And I remember she said, "Yeah, when I first met him, him and his brother, they introduced themselves. They said, yeah, I work with dirt." And she just kept on talking for a minute, and I thought to myself, man, there was a great possibility of a sermon. Because God works with dirt, doesn't He? He works with dirt every day. And that made me think about God's hands. God through the scriptures, He uses His hands He folds creation into place using the dust of the earth. And constantly throughout scripture, He uses the dirt of the earth. His hands are constantly working in the dirt to bring life, to bring, actually, and sometimes even death. Some of the stories of the people of Israel, he used dust to bring things like plagues, like the gnats, and even to cover up areas of the land that were not following His way. But more often than not, God uses the dust and the dirt of the earth to create and to make life. Jesus uses dirt, and His hands probably were dirty too. He uses dirt to make sight happen. He uses dirt to be a place where He's going to be reborn from an empty tomb. He uses dirt in many ways as well. And so it is that you think about God's hands. Then you think, what else does God's hands get into? God's hands, besides being dirty and maybe having dirt under the fingernails, God's hands probably smell like fish. And that's because Jesus was a fisherman. He was no stranger to working in our life and pulling in a catch and to handling the things of life because He walked this life with us. And His hands probably were they certainly weren't soft. They were probably tattered and sore, and maybe with all kinds of splinters and cuts and scars in them, even possibly because as a carpenter working with the wood and the things would certainly have left his hands not soft. And all those things remind us, you see, God isn't a distant God. God isn't far away. God is right here. And He understands, and that's why in the middle of these things, that's why the days are so important, to keep talking and listening and not letting ourselves get so caught up in all the frivolity, in a sense, of all the things that are going on in the world today. I was out trying to do something out front of the church today for a moment, and Ron and Janie Howe stopped by, and we were talking for a minute at a good 6 foot distance, and We were just talking, and Ron was talking about, wow, when do we get to come back to church? And oh my gosh, how can it be so long? And it's getting frustrating. I said, I know, but remember, uh, God's in all of it. It's all of it. He hasn't left us. He hasn't forsaken us. He's here. It's us who are getting impatient. And again, one of those reminders for us is that one of the things that we don't do very well in this world is sit still. People can do nothing, a bit, but doing nothing and being still are two different things. It's that reminder that when people are looking for what are we supposed to do and how do we do it, again, I'll tell you over and over, write letters, write cards, call members of the congregation, call other people. Do something to serve your neighbors by making some food and taking it over. We just had 2 young ladies showed up at the front door, all dressed up in their Sunday best, dropping off a Mother's Day gift. Not for me, of course, but for Becky. They're out serving somebody else, and they when you're serving somebody else, when you're giving away, you see, you don't worry about your own things. You don't focus on your own pieces. And yes, they're still there, and yes, they still need to be considered, and yes, they have to be worked with. But the truth is, they become so much smaller because you put them in the whole scheme of life. If our problem is the only thing that we see, then it'd be like getting buried. And God doesn't bury things. God uncovers things. God uses that dirt to bring healing and wholeness and hopefully life to people. And ultimately, there is a chance, though, that we've got to realize that part of that responsibility is ours to then take that on and to live the life that we're called to live, as Paul reminds us. God's hands must be amazing to see. Strong and powerful, yet rough and ready. Marred and scarred by the things of the world, and yet gentle enough to pick up any one of us at any time, to re-stand us up, to dust us off, to move us forward as we go. So I hope as you're celebrating your Saturday evening tonight in preparation for worship and other things tomorrow, because as the sun goes down, our reminder is we prepare for worship for tomorrow. And I look forward to having you see me, because I won't see you, of course, but to have you and have us together in worship. But don't forget tomorrow, too, to celebrate the gift of mothers. If you have them with you still, make sure you give them a hug and tell them that you love them. If you have someone who is special like that, and you're lucky enough to have that, a mother still in your life, and all the mothers in your life who are not your actual mothers, but who are the mothers who care for you and watch over you and sometimes even drive you crazy because they ask for all kinds of things to happen that you don't want to have happen, make sure you say thank you too, because they're still a gift from God as well. The mothering side of God cares for us and longs to pull us up under his wings, just like a mother hen longs to protect her children. And God gives us mothers so that we can understand that love as well. So tonight, as you go to your whatever it is you're doing, and as I try to get Becky out of playing in the dirt so we can maybe have a little bit of dinner and get ready for tomorrow, may God bless you, strengthen you, keep you, bring you joy and peace, and may you know his love in all you do. God's blessings. Bye-bye.